Test 1 2, test 1 2, test everyone.
Hello, testing. Can you hear us?
Testing.
Hello, testing.
Good morning.
I have a Polish friend who's a sound engineer and a check 1 2.
Oh,
No?
No.
yeah.
All right, we ready?
Yeah,
All right. Oh my gosh.
And this
I'm
is
so
what,
scared.
season 3?
Yes,
Yes,
this is
this
season
is new
3.
season.
Okay. All right, everybody, welcome. All right, everybody, welcome to season 3 of I'll Call My Guy podcast. It's been a while, but we're back. And today we have a very special guest. We have, two people here. We have Leah Connors and Julie Talbot. Julie produces the podcast. Leah is the director of operations at our firm and a longtime friend of mine. And so you guys want to tell them who the guest is?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Our guest today is the one and only Richard Rochlin.
Who's our guy, actually.
Who is our guy, yes.
And the guy for a lot of other people, I think, too.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. The reason for all of this, really.
And I want to make it clear
how we
that
all
this
came
was not
together.
my idea. So this isn't some sort of like narcissistic like tantrum I'm throwing here.
No,
like
we want people to know
they
you.
asked for it, not me.
Yes.
I didn't even suggest it. It didn't even come up in my head. So I want to make the record very clear that this was not my idea to like some ego trip or something. So.
The people want to know.
The people want to know.
You're very
All right,
serious.
I'll answer any question you got.
So let's jump right
into it.
All right.
I'm here. So whatever.
I'm going to let Julie start with, like, maybe some of these standard questions, only because I have a little friendship with him. So I feel
Absolutely,
like I want
yeah.
to hear your
absolutely.
take with it.
Well, I would just like to say this is just really fun being on the other side, first of all.
Yeah, you're usually behind
Thank
the...
you for having me, honestly.
Yes.
This
Yeah,
is really, really fun.
Julie produces everything, so she's the editor and does everything.
This
so
is my baby in a way.
This is her baby. It is her baby.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
So we're going to start with some background stuff.
Sure.
You've mentioned some of this before in previous podcasts, but let's get a little deeper.
Let's do it.
So where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the New Haven area. So specifically, I was born in a town called West Haven. We call it Waste Haven. It's a very working class. There's sort of ranges, but it's anywhere from sort of lower middle class. There's some middle class and then working poor kind of town. It's on the shoreline. It's I call it New Britain on the beach.
Very nice.
And it's it's a interesting town. I was born there in 1975.
Mm-hmm.
My mother
77.
and two uncles were raised there. My grandparents had a house there, and but I never went to the public schools there. I always went to the private schools. I was a single kid and raised by a single mother. My dad, I think, was around for a little bit, and I didn't meet him until I was 38. So put a pin in that.
Okay, good info.
But when I was in preschool, well, my mom tells this story, but it's she said basically that they identified me as somebody with had attention issues, and they didn't really know what ADHD was. Then you're sort of they called you a spaz.
Yeah.
Like your generation, they sort of knew what it was, and they dealt with it. It was just sort of doesn't apply himself, lazy, whatever.
That's a whole
thing.
So,
I actually have, I think I may have sent it to Leah. I've sent it to a ton of people, but it's funny. I have a psyche val of myself at 6 years old. It's hilarious. Did I send it to you?
Yeah.
And it's so funny because some of the same things that like are part of my personality now were part of my personality at 6.
We're prevalent.
That is
it's crazy.
So
I'll send it to you. Yeah,
like
it's
you
great.
Wherever you are in your core.
Absolutely.
At 6, it was like funny things. Talking to me about telling jokes to people, like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow. But I'll send it. It's only 2 pages. And so they said to her, look, kids, there was a sort of a very smart teacher there who actually I'm still friends with to this day, became a family friend named Sheila. And she said to my mom something like, from her studies, I think she went to Quinnipiac and got her master's degree. She was at the nursery school and said, look, kids like him without a father go 2 ways. They either could do really well or they end up in jail on drugs and have problems. Mm-hmm. So she identified that. So I tested well on stuff. So my mom always got me into private schools that were very small classes so I can get individualized attention. So so they brought me, so I did. So believe it or not, for my first, so from kindergarten through the middle of 4th grade, I was at, let me back up a sec. I was raised in a Reformed Jewish household. What that means is that we went to the synagogue on the High Holy Days. That's it. Other than that, maybe we had a Seder, but like we just ate food. We didn't do all the prayers.
Right.
We went to synagogue. I hated it. It was miserable. And then we like light a menorah. Julie's a member of the tribe too. So
I am a member, yes.
So we didn't do much, but so I always say like I was a Jew, but Jewish.
Yes, I am also Jewish.
Yeah, but we were still victims of anti-Semitism because we're in a town where there were no Jews, and But anyway, so she put me in a school that was very small. It was called the Hebrew Day School, which is a Lubavitch, like the Hasidic school.
Yeah.
I didn't have the beards and hats and the curls and the payas and all that stuff, but I was in a like the rabbi that ran it had 19 kids. Like it's one of those schools. These were Hasidic Jews. So in the morning, so half the day was in Hebrew, half the day was in English.
Wow.
So yeah, so
Completely.
we did, and you pray every morning. Yeah, it was a very religious school.
Do you know a lot of Hebrew?
I can read and write it.
Okay, that's amazing.
But I so which is the hardest part because it's a different alphabet.
Yes.
And you read from right to left.
I do know. Yes.
So I can read and write it. So I guess if I took lessons, I could probably pick it up very quickly because the hardest part is done. Right. It's not like you're learning French where you're reading the same alphabet or Spanish. Yeah. So I learned that. So I did that, and then in the middle of the fourth grade, I left because they started using corporal punishment. They would whip you, they grab you by your ear. They didn't know how to deal with someone like me. So my mom then put me in a school, which was in Woodbridge, that school was in Derby, like Derby, New Haven line.
Okay.
And then she put me in a school in Woodbridge, which was actually a very good school. There's only 13 of us per grade. And it was called Ezra Academy, and it was actually adjacent. It was a synagogue in Woodbridge called B'nai Jacob Synagogue, and they had a school attached to it. And so there's 13 of us, and that was middle of fourth grade through eighth grade. And so I'm still in touch with some of my friends from that school to this day. There's 13
amazing.
of us. So I did that. That school too. There was prayers in the morning too as well, and there was Hebrew lessons, but it was more, it was what we would call a conservative school. So it wasn't as religious, but still, Judaism is a big part of it. So you'd have, a Bible class, you'd have, a Hebrew language class. They also taught other languages as well. So, but it was small, 13 kids. So I got individualized attention. And that was, again, mid fourth grade through eighth grade. I should also note that I was not born Richard Rochlin. Did you know that?
I did.
Do you know what my last name is? This is a good trivia question.
It, but I do
know
it.
I know something about this.
So my birth name was my father's last name, which was Abrams. So I was born Richard Allen, Alan, Abrams, Abrams. And in the time when I went to the middle of fourth grade, 1985, I took my grandfather's last name because he played a big role in my life as a masculine sort of father figure. So I wanted to take his name. So I took his name and we changed it in probate court. So since 1985, I've been known as Richard Rochlin, but my birth name was Abrams.
Huh. Yeah. That is such an interesting fact.
Fun fact.
Yes, please.
His grandfather would call him Rocky, which is what I
that's not quite accurate. My grandfather's nickname was Rocky. He actually was an air conditioning and heating repair guy.
Mm-hmm.
And because of Rocklin, they would know as Rocky. So like I have his jacket from his like the gas station kind of jacket.
Mm-hmm.
It said Rocky on it. They know him as Rocky. My uncle in California goes by Rocky a little bit too. My uncle who passed away in West Haven, who was in 2021, I was very close with. He would go by Rocky as well. A lot of people would use that. The only two people that really call me that are Leah and my friend Scott in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
they call me Rocky. So, but yeah, so that's where that came from, Rocky. But mostly and then I have one friend that calls me Red because when I was young, he's known me since I was very little. I had reddish hair. I'll give you a picture you can post here, but it's reddish hair. Yeah. So he still calls me Red. Yeah.
Oh my! So many fun facts.
So
many lore. So many lore.
So that's. I guess you asked me where I grew up, and that's where.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so I grew up there, and then at some point,
high school.
Let's see. So I went to we moved out of West Haven. So here, let me. There's another important fact you should know. So. There was a time, my mom was living in an apartment. I guess she got divorced. I think it was one, maybe. She had me when she was 19. So my mother was born in 19.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say this because then somebody can reverse engineer this for getting my secret password. But my mom was born. My mom and I are like, I think she had me at 19. So somebody can do the math. But So, very close in age.
Yeah.
And she got divorced. And then we wound up living with my grandparents in their finished basement for many years. So I was very close with them.
Yeah.
And so when we moved to the other side of town, I would always go to their house and spend the weekends there, always. And so my mom was single, she would do her thing, but I would always go from Friday. My grandmother would like pick me up at school, and Fridays to Sundays, I would always stay with them.
Mm-hmm.
And they would help with transportation. My mom was a single mother. She was working at the VA in West Haven for years. So I was very close with them. And so that continued. I actually wound up living with them when I was 16 years old for a variety of reasons. But yeah, so I lived with them on the weekends, and, obviously a big part of my life. And that was in West Haven as well. But I was going to school in Derby or Woodbridge. From West Haven. And then when I was 10, when I went to that new school in Woodbridge, actually, we moved to Hamden. My mom met somebody, got married. Sort of an interesting thing. My mom met somebody who was only 10 years older than I was. It's bizarre. And married him.
Interesting. I don't think I even knew that.
And
Wow.
and he lives with my brother now. I have a half brother. I have a bunch of brothers, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. But we lived in Hamden, and then so. We would commute to Woodbridge, which isn't that far, and then high school. I ended up in 1989, I think it was. Went to Hamden Hall, which is a private school on Whitney Avenue that you probably pass sometimes if you're driving.
I'm sure.
Class of 55 kids, very small. Private high school.
Yeah.
It's like any of these very expensive like KO.
Yeah.
Really good education.
Did you
Lots of
enjoy
wealthy kids.
your high school experience?
I did. I did. I don't have a bad experience there. Yeah, I didn't. Everyone was sort of fine.
Where did you hang out in high school? Like, where was your hangout spots?
We would. So some of the friends that I hung out with, actually, some of my closest friends today. So I have a friend that I always refer to as Sticks. My friend Mike.
Shout out to Sticks. Shout out to Mike.
He's a Mets fan,
Listen,
and he's not.
Sticks,
And then the Mets won last night.
Sticks is a good time.
Yeah, Sticks is the greatest guy.
Sticks is a lot of fun.
He's a good guy, and Leah used to work with his brother,
which is how I called my guy.
So this all ties
you
in.
Told me
Yeah.
this.
So I met Sticks when I was 14 years old, my first day or second day of high school, and he was with this guy Dave Wade, who I was just texting with online, and Dave went out to become the press secretary for John Kerry when he was Secretary of State, big into Democratic politics. His wife is Jill Biden's personal assistant.
Wow.
Like, he's big into Democratic politics. So I was just DMing with him last night. So they were talking about wrestling. We were big into wrestling, WWF at the time, now WWE. It was actually called WWF years ago.
Yeah,
but there was a lawsuit over the World Wildlife Federation.
One of them, WWE bought WWF, I think.
No. WWF existed, and then I think they just changed to WWE, and then it was done. But anyhow, we talked about that, and we became kids. So where did we hang out? We weren't drinkers. We didn't know marijuana or anything like that. We'd meet at we had at some point we got a little bit older. We had a standing reservation at Sally's Pizza before they were so big, and so we can go there and we get pizza.
You have told me that, yeah.
And but we'd also hang out at my grandparents' house, so they would come and meet us there. Todd, my friend Todd Berger, I'm still in touch with. He lives in West Haven still. He was in Shelton at the time. He would come over. We'd grill out a lot. We'd meet after school.
Grilling.
We'd hang out there, but we wouldn't. We weren't big into house parties or woods parties. I didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't get in any trouble. We didn't drink really. I mean, there was a place after we got our license. There was a place in Orange, which is a town between Milford and West Haven, nice suburb of New Haven, and it was called Pizza City. I think it's still there. And you'd go in and you could just be order some pizzas and be like, can we also have a picture of beer? And I'm like, sure. And they just put it there. They wouldn't care. They just wanted to make money. And we'd be we're having a beer. But that's the most that ever went. No one ever was intoxicated.
Right.
We were good kids. We never did anything crazy.
Did you work in high school? Did you have a job?
I did. I've worked since my first job was, so when we lived in Hamden, when I was 10 through 14 or so, 14 or 15. So I lived, if you ever go to the motor vehicle department in Hamden, which is on State Street, the house directly next door to the motor vehicle, as close as that across the street. That's how close we lived to the motor vehicle. That there.
That's crazy.
And then they built literally right behind my house one of the first Wawas, if you remember Wawa, which is in Pennsylvania.
Really?
Yeah, they built it right behind my house. So far that I used to be able to bounce a ball off the back of the Wawa. Yeah, the Wawa used to be in Connecticut.
Oh yeah, Wawa used
They
to be
wanted to expand and bring gas station. They wanted to put gas in, and the state gave them a hard time, so they pulled out. And now all the Krausers are former Wawas.
The Wawa lore.
So if you ever, so if you ever see a Krauser,
Wow.
those are former
It was a
Wawas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Every Krauser. So,
Oh,
so
interesting.
they built it right behind my house. I was 13 years old. I'll never forget it.
What's your favorite gas station? Quickly.
I have a Tesla. I don't know.
Okay, but before
Oh,
the Tesla, where would you go?
Oh, you mean like the serve stuff?
Just-
I mean, state
Yeah,
nationwide. Wawa.
Nationwide.
Yeah, I'm not a Sheetz person. I'm a Wawa person.
Yeah, Wawa.
Wawa's the
Now, what
best.
about the state? Cumbies?
Yeah, Cummins is fine. I mean, I don't. I'm there to get gas. I'm not like into it, but
This
But,
Tesla
like-
guy. I have an answer.
I would like
What
to
is
know.
it?
Okay, so my statewide is obviously Cumbies, I guess.
Yeah.
From New England.
My Boston convenience store is obviously 7-Eleven.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Get all my groceries at 7-Eleven. And then nationwide, Bucky's Girl all the way. So
Oh.
well, sure, Bucky's, right? Bussies.
let's go.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah, Bucky's is good, but Bucky's only Texas.
quick cue.
Yeah. So, what was I saying?
Your first
about-
job.
Oh, so when they were opening, I was the first customer. I went there at 5 a.m. when they opened, and I ingratiated
Yeah.
myself to the manager
Wow.
there, and then I convinced her that I want to do work, and she would let me, take this little broom. I remember a little tiny broom. I'd go in the back, get the broom. I was 13 years old, and I'd go around, and she'd let me clean the parking lot, like sweep up.
We saw somebody doing that.
What's happening?
Yeah. We saw that yesterday while we were talking
saw someone doing
about
Like somebody that's
about
touched
you with the
usually does it.
podcast. Yeah, like
Yeah.
No, this is just
No. So
I
anyhow,
hate it.
so but I wasn't touched,
Okay.
but I was still 13. I was hungry. So I remember I would work for an hour, and I remember she would like press a button on the register, and she'd hand me $5 cash. Then I started doing more of that. I'd say I want to come, and she'd let me clean up. Usually they give that to somebody who maybe has some issues, but and she started letting me make like I'd say, can I get a sandwich too? And she's like, yeah, sure. And that's where I developed the best combination for a sandwich, which I will share with you.
Yeah, okay.
oh, I would love to hear
So
that.
I love.
Doing
Shout out to Jillian and Eric Chenko. A mayonnaise-based sandwich, MBS as they call it.
MBS.
So like a tuna salad or no egg salad. I'm not a huge egg salad,
Or
but
chicken
but, but
salad.
but I love tuna salad.
Sure,
I love
yeah.
tuna salad. Best tuna salad around is Crown down the street.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. But and Wawa has that really good bread because I remember they'd get it from Philadelphia and they use D'Alessandro's or they use Sarcone seeded rolls. They would get them like shipped up. So it's a really
Nice.
good bread. So I love tuna salad. And what I invented is that you take the bread and before you put, and you don't put cheese on tuna salad. Before you put you dress the bread at all with any of the toppings,
Mhm.
you put red wine vinegar, heavy, on both sides of the bread. Then you put the tuna, then you put lettuce, extra pickles, onions,
Wow.
no tomato on there. And that's it. And then pepper, of course, salt and pepper.
We'll have to
But
give
the
that a
vinegar,
try
the
for
acid of the
Yes.
vinegar cuts through the fat of the mayo.
Mayo.
My friend Chuck,
Wow.
shout out
Yeah,
to Chuck,
that's interesting.
loves it. He gets it to this day. I get it. And so that's why I have red wine vinegar downstairs. 'Cause every time I get tuna, I put it on.
Ah.
Anyhow,
MBS.
so that's where that happened. So I worked there. But my first job, like on the books job, was at down the street from Hamden Hall when I was 15, 1991 to 92. It was a French patisserie, so a little pastry shop, and I worked the front counter and I sold pastries to people and cakes.
That's so sweet.
It was called Patisserie
No pun
Normande. It
Sorry.
was called Patisserie Normande. I worked there. $5.
That's
It was
really
$5 an
fun.
hour.
I love that.
And I worked there. I remember during the Gulf War, it was like 91, 15, 20. I forget the year. Oh, anyhow, I was 15 or 16, 1990, 1991. I worked there for a bunch. And then once I got my license, my first job was at McDonald's
Nice.
on the highway. So 95 north in
go.
Milford. So I would
You
get
know
up.
that's one of the busiest McDonald's.
Oh, it is. Yeah. So
Literally
I would.
on the 95 corridor.
Yeah. So I
To
would.
this day, still.
Yeah. So I
I
would
believe
work.
it.
I would work from Saturday and Sunday. I would work. So this is during high school, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. every
Wow.
Saturday and Sunday.
That's a huge compromise as like a high school student.
That
like
was my
you're-
first
yeah.
thought.
Well, here's why.
huge
Because I had to pay
compromise.
for my insurance, and nobody can give me any
Yeah,
money
but
for
that's
this.
Yeah.
super respectable. I
Yeah.
mean, you
Yeah.
compromise your
Yeah, so I had to
entire
work.
free time.
So
to
I
work.
did. So I have to do that. So I worked 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then I became very good at it. I got like I remember my little name tag. You get a gold star when you're proficient in either cash
I
register,
never
which is
had a gold
customer
star.
service.
I never had
The second one was for the cleaning and like keeping the place nice, and the third one was for cooking. So I would know how to
Nice.
clean the fryer, work the fries,
Triple threat.
and make all the burgers. And they had the best thing there that they need to bring back, which is the chicken fajitas. They had chicken fajitas
At
there.
McDonald's.
They were so good.
Wow.
They were
in
delicious.
the 90s. That's crazy.
It was amazing. It was amazing. So they bring it back. So I do all that. So I
They
worked
do fun
there,
stuff
and
like
then I
that.
worked.
Yeah, really
then I wound up
different
working
time.
I worked at a place called Caldor in 1990. I
Oh,
remember. I worked there in
Caldor.
Hamden. I also worked at TJ Maxx for a little bit.
Okay.
So Caldor is very similar to like what a Home Goods used to be.
Thinking.
No,
Okay.
no, it's more
But,
like it was a department store, like
Kmart. Do
yeah,
you remember
Kmart. It's Kmart.
It's like in my head somewhere, I feel, but
Yeah, Kmart, that kind of store. So yeah, it was like Bradley's was another one that went out of
Yeah,
business.
I've heard of
Ames-
Bradley's. Yeah.
Ames, it was a
big one,
real
yeah.
department store. So I worked there, and then nothing else till then I went to college. So I went to college in
Nice.
1993.
Ooh,
I graduated in 1993, and then I went to college at American University in DC.
That's right.
Did you know you wanted to be a lawyer when you went to college?
No, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I actually had my heart set on George Washington University, which is the really good school next to the Capitol of White House.
Yeah.
But I went down with a friend who wanted to do a tour of DC schools. It's a crazy story. I went down there, and we're in high school. We take the train down, my friend Greg, and we wound up, they give you the admissions office, we stayed over for the night. So they tee us up with, like a person. You stay in their dorm room, like in a sleeping bag or whatever, and they take you out and show you the campus. Well, there was this whole fraternity thing, and they were They were doing Rush, which is basically recruitment.
Yeah.
And so he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm affiliated with these guys. You should come." So I'm like, "All right." So I went with them. We wound up going to this bar, and crazy story. Who's at the bar? But my friend Dan Schulman, who's my friend in Chicago to this day, and my friend Kartik, who I just met in Paris.
Kartik.
I'm 16 or 17 years old. I have the pictures.
You told me about
It's crazy.
this
I just
person.
met with him in Paris, one of my closest friends. And this other guy named Tim Harmon, who I'm friends with on Facebook, who was involved in the financial aid office as a student. He was always like a CEO type. I think he's a CEO. He's retired now, but he was like an influential, one of these like Michael J. Fox. I don't know if you remember that show, Growing Pains, or Family Ties. Anyhow, he played this like young, like Republican, like kid who was into like business. He was like that kid. He was like on all the boards at school because I think he was like his junior or senior year in college, and I was a kid in high school. So anyway, we wound up going out to this bar. We hit it off, and they're doing this Rush thing, and we wound up talking, and they're feeding me beers and whatnot. And I had already applied early admission to George Washington, and they all convinced me to not do that and apply for AU, and he would help me get into a good dorm and get me good scholarships and all these things. And so I went home, and after that night, I pulled my admissions from my application from GW. Applied to American University, and to this day, those are some of my closest friends.
That's incredible.
And the crazy thing is, I wound up becoming the president of that fraternity.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a wild story. But yeah, anyhow, so I went to American.
Everything happens for a reason.
I went to American University for college. I worked during college as well. I did work study. I had to do a little of that. I worked at the front desk at the library. I used to have to break up people having sex in the bathroom.
Oh,
That was like a thing there.
Well, then when did you decide or think that you wanted to be a lawyer? Like
here's how I don't have
career?
a great memory of that. One of the things with ADHD, sometimes you don't have good memory of certain things. Like I can recall certain things, but here's what I do remember. When I was finishing up college, and my grades weren't good in college. I still was an unmedicated ADHDer. I was sort of all over the place. But my friend Jay Pratt, again, one of my closest friends who's in Boston, I just went up for his 50th birthday. He was a year ahead of me and in the fraternity. He actually voted against my admission to the fraternity. He still tells me for this day.
Isn't that funny?
But he's one of my closest friends. He took a year off. When I was a senior, he was at the Justice Department in a special program, antitrust program.
Mm-hmm.
He was applying to law school. Jay's from Connecticut as well. And so he said, "Hey, I'm applying to UConn." And I'm like, I need something to do. So so I said, okay, I'll go to law school. I applied as well. Luckily, my grades didn't carry me, but I tested really well. So I got really high scores on that. I got some good letters of recommendation. And then Jay and I just applied. We both got in. And then we packed up in 1997 and drove to Hartford, moved in together, and we lived together for all 3 years of law school.
And the rest
And that's
is
why.
history.
So I didn't know I wanted to be a lawyer. He was doing it. And I needed something to do.
That's so interesting.
And
Yeah.
you're so
That's really
good
weird.
at
Yeah.
lawyering, which is like
It's like,
oh, my friend was doing it. I
who
wanted
you-
to.
Yeah, I don't think it was like, I mean, as a kid, I talked about being a doctor, a physician.
Okay.
yeah.
But I never, it just sort of fell in my lap kind of thing. I just went to law
Yeah.
school and I figured it out.
You're like, okay, I'll just do this.
So I don't know. I don't have a good memory of I think it was really just like I needed, it was sort of the next step, go to grad school. And
Something was telling you
yeah,
to do that,
Jay did it. And
clearly.
I just followed him.
that's beautiful,
So
kind of.
why family law?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so you're jumping way ahead.
Yeah, you did a lot of things before this.
You want to back up a sec? So we went to, so I went to law school for 3 years. I did really well in law school, and here's why. You only have one test per semester. That's your grade.
Mm.
So you go all in. right? It's not like, because if you fuck up and get it, on your exam, you end up with a C. You can't build it back up with other stuff. You have one test. That's it.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot of pressure.
Fun fact about me too, I don't take any notes. I just sit and listen.
Like a psycho? What?
I know.
You know what's so funny? You just use that because I call him that all the time. I call him my little psycho. My little psycho.
She says that to me. You know who says that to? Jilly says that to. Jilly calls me that too. My little psycho. Yeah, I don't. I mean, in court, I'll take some notes down, like like for questioning and stuff. But I don't take like general. I listen.
I've seen like your notes.
Yeah, they're not.
Just
they're not helpful.
They're very minimal.
Yeah,
they're not helpful. I listen.
They're very shorthand. They're shorthand.
Yeah, I
get
listen.
that.
I listen.
That's really interesting.
Yeah,
as a person
I
who's
listen,
not
and because it's most of the tests are open book, and they're for law school.
Yeah,
they're open book, and it's conceptual stuff, so I can work through that stuff. But it's now it would be easier because I would just turn on the AI on the computer, and it would just take all the notes from me. But I don't need them, or I get them from somebody.
Times are different.
So I did really well in law school, and then I became. I got onto Law Review, which is like a prestigious thing, and I became the managing editor of the Law Review, which is the number 2. And so I ended up, I think, if anyone cares now, but I was like 10th in my class, 15th in my class, something like that.
That's
so I did really well. I did really well in law school.
Amazing.
Considering I was trash in college. So and so I liked law school a lot. And then I wound up going to so the way it works is during your not your first year, but at the beginning of your second year, all these people, these firms and companies come to campus for OCI, on-campus interviews. You submit your resume, and then they cull it based on grades. They say, we want to meet with you. So you go, like they have it like 3-4 days. They interview you. And I put this resume together that I had seen somebody do back in DC, which was made by, I wish I still had a copy of it, but it was like a graphic designer made it. And it was, and lawyers, by training, and I think this is wrong, are very conservative people. They want to see the same thing. They don't like different. They want to see whatever. And I'm not like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I did this thing. It was basically, I remember on the left side of my resume was a gray box, and it had all my academic history and things that I did. And on the right was my experience. So it was different. And the people I remember in the career services told me, do not do this. It wasn't like it was controversial. It was just different. It was like a layup.
Yeah.
So I would never forget a guy who ultimately later joined my firm for a year. Now is at the FDIC, and he was a partner at the firm that I joined, a big firm named Ben Kerwicki. He's in DC. Hi, Ben. Ben was culling the interview. When the resumes would come in, and he told me, because when I went to go for the callback interview, they send one guy to campus to make sure I passed the smell test. They invite me back. And I remember he got an interview with me, like a half-hour interview. And he came into the room and he's like, I needed to meet the guy that would do this, that would send this into like a white shoe firm. I had to.
Yeah.
And of course we hit it off. And so I'm good at interviews. So again, I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but it's important sometimes to do it. But during high school, I'll go back a second. We had this thing called academic decathlon, and you would never think that I'd be in that because it's usually a different sort of certain kind of person that would do it. But I won best interview in the whole state. You go in basically, so you take tests on biology and whatever, and then you see how you rank. But one of the things is you go into a 6-panel thing for 20 minutes, and they interview you, and they do it for 150 kids that are from all over the state, and I won best in the whole state for interviews. So I'm good at interviews. I can talk to people, right?
Yeah.
So I went in and I interviewed them, and then they offered me a job during the summer. And what's cool is during the summer they pay you weekly what you'd make as a lawyer. So I was 23 years old. Granted, at the time I think the salary was $65,000, still a lot of money then. And they pay you that weekly, and they take you out to lunch, and they schmooze you and all those things. So I went there, and again, I'm still very close friends with a lot of those people. And then at the end of the summer, if they like your work, they give you an offer that says, hey, when you finish law school and you sit for the bar, as soon as it's done, you come work for us as a lawyer, and you have a job. Before I even graduated, I was 23 or 24. I had a job as a lawyer at a big white shoe firm in Hartford, which was a Boston-based firm. And I did finance law.
Huge.
And so I went there and I did corporate finance.
Yeah.
In between that, I was married once, no kids. So and then I lived in Hartford and worked there, and And then I, wound up switching law firms a couple of times. I went to another big firm for a couple of years, then a medium-sized firm for a year, and then broke off on my own. And then flailed around for a bit until I can figure out
what your thing was.
Yeah. And then,
that's huge.
And again,
with whatever
I
you're
told the
doing.
story a zillion times, not on here, obviously, but we went to the guy who got me into this was Steve Dembo, who's now Judge Dembo, and I always thank him for that. I was in court testifying about he was a divorce lawyer and now a divorce judge, a family judge, and he was I was testifying about the corporate structure of a company, a guy who was getting divorced, and they pulled me aside during a break and said, "Hey, you should help. His lawyer wasn't very good at the time, and they had been going on fighting for half a year. And he said, "Hey, you should really why don't you represent him?" And the judge said, "Yeah, you should too." And I said, "I don't even know where a courtroom is."
I think you told me this.
Yeah, I literally don't know where the court is. I had to look it up. I'd never been in a court in my life. I got sworn in a court. And I didn't know. So I went to my client, who I represent his company, not him. And I said, "Hey, they think I should help you." And he's like an entrepreneur, so he will take risks, And he said, "Yeah, I could see that." So I'm like, "All right, I'll try it." And so I wound up meeting with Steve, and we settled the case in 2 weeks. I just had a knack for it. I'm like, I figured it out. So I'm like, all right. So we settled it. And then so he said to me, "Listen, you're good at this. Don't refer cases to me on family work. You just take them and I'll help you through them." So I started doing it, but I still did the corporate stuff on the side because I was trying to make money. I had a family to feed and stuff. And then at some point, Ryan McKean, as you guys all know, he came to me and said,
"Shout out to Ryan.
You got to do one thing and do it well and get rid of all the other stuff." And I was scared shitless because that other stuff was bringing me in a lot of money.
Yeah.
But he said, "You got to get rid of it." So I said, "All right." I took a deep breath, held my breath, and did it. And it was the best thing ever. So that's how I got the family law.
That is incredible.
Accidental. I was a witness. Someone pulled me in.
Though.
Yeah.
That's a really special opportunity that, I don't know, I feel like I can relate in the way that Steve provided you with that help and guidance as you are to me right now in some sense. So that's really special.
Yeah, it was good.
Really
he really helped me, and I always I had a couple of firm dinners the last few years before we grew this big, and I would always thank him in the toast because he really helped me. And saw something in me, and helped me. I'd call, he'd always take my call and help me through issues. And now people call me for questions, so it's good. It's I've come a long way.
You are the guy.
I'm one of the guys. I'm not the guy, but I'm certainly one of them, or one of the gals. There's women that are fantastic at this as well. So anyway, that's why I got into family law. But
another thought I have on Ryan's advice to you about picking something and sticking with it and really focusing on that. I think it's also really important that you have to be enjoying that, and you have to just enjoy it. And
I'm happy
it's super, super important.
So I'm happy to talk. I give a lot of background, but I'm happy to also talk about the
passion.
I'll call my guy concept, right? Because one of the ways that we've built this firm so quickly and without any marketing budget. I always tell people that we don't have a marketing budget. I mean, we could do this, but we don't formally market. We don't buy ads.
Right. Yeah.
Now we have 3 lawyers and 6 or 7 employees, whatever it is. How do you do that? And part of it is, you're right. You gotta, and I tell my kids this, you gotta find something that you love, and then the money will come, right? But more importantly, you also, one of my philosophies is the golden rule. I try to treat people like I'd want to be treated.
Yes.
My grandfather taught me that at a very young age.
Yep.
Think about it. If I was in this situation, how would I want somebody to treat me? It's the golden rule, right?
Yeah.
That's the famous rule. So I try to live by that. I try to be kind to people. Even people on the other side of cases. And then
absolutely.
And then I also I always try to connect with people because again, my grandfather planted all these seeds with me, but he always, used to say to me, do good because you should do good, but also you never know who's watching, just do it. And, somebody will take notice and they'll be watching and, that person could refer business to you or do something. But most importantly, I just try to work hard for people and give them a good product and do right because it's the right thing to do. I'm not a religious person at all, so I'm almost irreligious. But I believe that you do good for good's sake and do the right thing and just help people and you work hard. And because I do one thing, I just know it so well, so I kind of know what the parameters are, and so that's a part of it. But I also like, I tend to think that I connect well with people. I'm good with people. I can size people up fairly quickly. One of my best skills is that I can be equally as comfortable at a construction site as I can be in a boardroom. So I can go from a construction site and get those guys as my clients and they'll identify with me because, I get it. I worked construction during summers during college and I'm fairly handy. I can wire and run pipe and all these different things. But also go to a boardroom and be able to talk to those guys, and do all that stuff too. So I have that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a product of my upbringing, right?
Yeah.
That's a product of, again, being a relatively poor kid. We had food stamps. We were on Section 8. We had, all kinds of government assistance, scholarship. I mean, every grants, Pell Grants. I got all the stuff the poor kids get because we were poor. But also, I'm in a school where it's $70,000, or then it was $30,000 a year, whatever it was. But with parents that are doctors, lawyers, judges,
right?
And so I got exposed to that world as well. So I'm comfortable in both worlds like that, where most people don't have that. And so I'm grateful for that skill that my background forged that. So I can, again, I have clients that are very very prominent surgeons that can come in, and I can yuck it up with them. But the guy who's put sprinklers in job sites, in sub-zero temperatures, I can talk to him as well about, shitting in a porta potty,
right.
at 30 below. Like the point is that I can relate to all of them. And that's a product of my background, which I think lend itself to making me, being able to grow this nice business that we have. Yeah.
I think a huge part of that and just connecting and talking to people in general and building relationships, I think a huge part of that that a lot of people don't really think about I think a lot of people don't consider that we're all just human and we just want to be heard.
Yeah.
I know we talk about this and we all just want to be heard, and in order to connect with someone in this way, you have to use active listening. Yeah.
You're a very humanistic person, which I think your personal qualities that you have as a person really make you a wonderful family lawyer. It's such an emotional, vulnerable time for people. You're able to really level set with anybody, like you said, whether it's a construction site or a boardroom. You can be a very humanistic person, and I think that's a trait and a quality not a lot of people have, which, in my opinion, as your friend and working with you, I think that's made you very successful in your career, that you're able to do that with clients and people during a really difficult time of their life. Yeah. And they're like putting their entire trust into you as a person, and you provide this sense of like humility and like realness with people, which I think is rare.
Normalcy, like authenticity.
Yeah, authenticity is a great word.
It makes people feel safe and warm and comforted. I learned a lot about that working in hospitality, so I can relate in that way, and it's definitely interesting coming and working here and seeing how you guys utilize that. I'm learning a lot more about that.
I do talk a lot. I mean, one of the reasons why I troll LinkedIn all the time is because it is the most inauthentic place that exists in the world.
It is.
Yeah,
it's just so fake. So what I do is I just, I troll it because, look, there's sort of a, you would say, well, aren't you mature? You would stay away from it. I'm like, nah, I just like to screw with it a little bit because I just like to point out it's like, everybody just like, slapping each other on the back, like, like, oh yeah, I just got promoted. I'm this and this. And I get it. It's people use it, like people that aren't self-employed like me, like they use that to like connect with people and like maybe find their next job. I get it. You got to play the game. But to me, like, I'd rather be broke and do it on my own than play that game. I'm just not into that.
Why are we doing this?
Or like these people that reach out to me on there, like, I saw your profile. We'd love to talk to you about this. And then I always, you guys see sometimes I write back to them. They're like, Rich, following up on my email. I'm like, you sent me an unsolicited email. You didn't do the work to find somebody who knew me to make an introduction to connect to me. You're banned for a year. You're banned for a year. You can't contact me anymore. You're jailed. Go right to jail.
Right to jail.
It's like, no, like if you look, I did the BNIs and those groups where you have to market, and then what you do is you send something out to your network and you say, hey, I want to meet. I know this woman named Leah, and she is a banker, and I know that she is in charge of giving out, selecting lawyers for closing deals, right? I don't just write to Leah and say, "Hey, Leah, I'm a lawyer in West Africa." That's all. Like, who? That's cold.
Right.
It's like
No.
cold.
Yeah.
What you got to do is you got to
that
do your
is
work, and you got to say,
weird.
"Who knows Leah?" And then somebody say, "Oh my God, I used to work with Leah." I said, "I'll tell you what. Could you do a happy hour and have me come, and then I'll just riz Leah. I'll talk to Leah,
Right.
and then you build a connection, and that's
Like,
authentic.
don't be weird.
That's how you got to do the work.
Right.
You can't. I need cold.
It's not weird if you don't make it weird.
And the reason why people do cold stuff because a certain percentage do get back to them. They grab a bite, and it's like you feel
Right.
you chum
Just
the water
enough.
enough, some fish will bite. But I'm not. It bothers me because to me it's inauthentic.
Yeah.
They write like, "Oh, Rich, I hope this email finds you well." You don't know you don't know if I'm a molester. Like, how do you know?
Yeah.
Like, if I'm
You don't know
like,
how it's finding
does it
me.
find me well? Like, you don't give a fuck about me. You know anything about me. So sometimes I like when I'm in a mood, I'll be like, do you really care if it finds me well or not? Do you care if I have stage 4 brain cancer?
No, yeah.
No, you
No.
just want my business.
Right.
So go do the work, find someone to make an introduction to me, and then, or meet me at in town and buy me oysters and I'll talk to you.
Right.
And then I'll assess if I can use your thing. But you got to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I'm a big proponent of authenticity. And you can't teach authenticity. Just be fucking authentic. Just do good stuff. Be nice to people.
Right.
But you also have to again I'm going down some rabbit holes, which I do, but you also have to be protective of your business because what happens is, and I used to do all this, people would just text me whatever, hey Rich, I got this, so now everything has to be filtered through Jillian because I say, look, you want to come talk to me, you gotta make an appointment because I can't when people text me like it's too much, and I'm just like, I try to keep that for personal stuff.
I feel that,
so I'm like, look, you want to come in, great, I'll help you, but
to jump back to the point of being authentic, when talking to people, I learned that was huge as well when I was when I work now in hospitality still, but I definitely had to learn that, and I learned that by having a lot of difficult tables, and a lot of people are really, really mean and really, really difficult, and I found that people were extremely more receptive to me and my presence and my being there as their server. They were a lot more open to that when I would just, how I am. I think you all know how I am. When I just
see Julie.
I find that has worked a lot better since I started letting myself shine through a little bit more at work in that way. So, and I definitely use that outside of work as well. I think it's super, super important to just be yourself. But let's move on. We have lots more to get into here with little time here. What legacy do you hope to leave behind?
It's I think it's still a work in progress. I think it's like anybody, right? You want to leave an impact. You want to help people know that I think I forgot who said this, but maybe you can Google this. I forgot who said it, but somebody once said there's all these idioms and adages about if you help if you save one person, you can save it's like you've saved the world.
Yes.
And all that sort of stuff. But it's also if you can, how do you? I'm backing into it. How do you define success? Is if you can help one person breathe easier. That's that's how I define success, not money. But so I think part of it is that you helped a lot of people. You had an impact on their life. You changed their life for the better. But I still think that needs. I think you work on. I think that you have this in this sort of your unconscious to a large extent drives what you want your legacy to be, and I sort of know consciously that I want to help people and be able to make people breathe easier and get them through a tough time and improve their lives in some way and be remembered for that. But I also think the legacy is always something you're working on.
Absolutely.
So I can't so I guess if you had to the short answer would be it would be that remembered as somebody who was kind, who helped other people breathe easier.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say. You know, you're always sort of figuring it out and learning more. I mean, I learn something new every day. And you have to be.
I thought that the minute I got in my car this morning.
Yeah, you have to. You have to.
Absolutely.
And if you think that you know it all, you're an idiot. You don't. And life throws at you different challenges. Now, that's not to say that you can be very well experienced and, you know, like I solve complex problems for a living. And also being somebody that was poor and, you know, and didn't have much and whatever, I'm also uniquely able to solve other like life problems too. So a lot of people come to me and I can not just solve your legal problems, but I know how to like, I'm pretty good at navigating life.
Yes.
So like interpersonal things, although I'm awful at a lot of interpersonal things. So don't let me, you know, like I can help you, but I can't help myself.
Yeah.
But in any event, yeah. So you know, I'm like
I find you're very
I'm like a coach that can't slam, like a basketball coach that can't slam dunk or play basketball.
Yeah.
But I can get you motivated, and I know what you got to do to win.
Yeah.
So I think there's a, you know, but I couldn't do any of that stuff myself.
Right.
So it's.
But I think that's why people like call you a lot for things. Like you're also the guy for a lot of people.
I am. Yeah. And I also don't judge. I don't judge people either. I don't give a shit.
You provide a very welcoming environment.
Yeah, I don't care.
Anything to, and you really just want to help and support, which I think is very rare.
Yeah,
right?
And people too come in and they're doing some shit. Like I want to learn about it. Like I'm like
you're very curious.
Yes.
Yeah. Never judgmental. You're always curious.
No, I want to know like how you got into that. Like what did you do? I think that's important too. Like again, I think that you come in and you know, and I just tell people I solve problems. I don't care how you got here. Like just I'll tell you how to solve it. I don't you know, I'm not looking at like you know, look, we all are you know, we're not the sum of our worst moments, right? We
absolutely
we make bad decisions. We're humans. We're
so important.
You know, that we're subject to our own upbringings and our own genetics.
Yeah.
And so you make choices, and sometimes they're not the right choice, and you know, sometimes that leads some people get into criminal activity because they acted out of anger, or you know, they don't have really good executive functioning because they grew up in an abusive household, and you know, there's certain people that, you know, I think that some of it is, look, you have an assembly line in a factory, right? An assembly line is everything is very much, there's very few tolerances, right? There's parts that are made, there's a frame of a car, and you're putting stuff on there, right? And so most of the cars are going to be fine. Sometimes you can get a recall because one of the parts was bad from one of the manufacturers, but you're genuinely going to get good cars that run, and they're all going to be the same, right? There's going to be the same Toyota Camry that comes off in every line except for some of the options. Now, when you're making a child and a child is growing, there's so many different factors. Not an assembly line, right? You're growing this child. It has, you know, the child has, there's genetics, then there's environment. What is the mother's womb like? What is she taking in?
Yeah.
So that you don't just always get the same car that comes off the line. Things can go wrong. Their brain chemistry can be different. And then, of course, you layer on top of that, as complex as we are as humans, how were they raised? Did they have strong attachments to parents? So all these things that come in, and then we expect everybody to just be in line and not commit crime and make the right decisions. And that's foolish.
The expectations are way too high. The expectations are way too high.
So I always say,
let's lower them.
You know, I don't know, you know, why did somebody do something and you say, oh my God, you're a knuckle. But like, I don't know, you know, like, you know, what if nobody ever taught them how to make good decisions, or their models were all that? And people always say, oh, well, they should do better. I'm like, yeah, but if they don't have that, module, like, and nobody ever showed them that, like, we, you know, and so I've always struggled with people that are just so like black and white on that, because it's not black and white.
Yeah, it's not.
So people come in, and then of course, then there's certain people that, you know, become personality disordered, and then their personality is just stuck because of some trauma as a kid, and then of course, in the context of divorce, that becomes very difficult because somebody's been living with this person who's got this undiagnosed mental illness, and then the divorce agitates them even more, and then of course, then they turn the kids against the person. It becomes a big mess. So I try to find an off ramp for people if they can, because courts are, you know, it's not in my place they can, and I've gotten justice for folks, but you know, but the people that I got justice against don't think I got
Right.
justice. They thought that the court system screwed them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, there is a level of subjectivity there.
And lack of accountability, I think.
Right.
A lot of people who, like you said, were raised certain types of ways sometimes have a really hard time self-reflecting and being accountable to themselves due to whatever their environment is, which is a huge problem, I think, today. And it's something that we see a lot of in our line of work. Is there's a huge lack of accountability of shortcomings in partners and families and relationships that affect the kids and everything else ultimately.
And of course, and we're also like, there's all this like psychology about this, but our unconscious is that we're, we chase partners that are trying for us to sort of heal childhood wounds and all this shit. So of course that complicates things. And
well, we're all like byproducts of our parents who are byproducts of their parents and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Somebody once told me you're a collection at most. Like people say like, oh, like, why is my kid this way? You're like, it's not necessarily because of you. They're a collection of a genetic collection of the last like 10 people. Like, so you have all of that. And like the kid, maybe like go off and do something. And you're like, I thought I like was good to this kid. And so, I mean, and then you have the pressures there and there's so many different factors, the environment. And remember, you were a different parent to every kid because you were at a different stage in your life.
Right.
So so you're like, wait a second, I treated that kid the same. Like, no, you didn't. They're exactly different. You may have a different reaction to this kid than this kid, and the kid's stage is different because now there's another kid there. So it's a very complex system, and I try to recognize that, and as part of my way I treat people because I recognize that we're all just trying to get by here,
Right.
And then you get cancer and die.
Yeah.
Well, that's very crass of you to say.
Yeah. True. Like real.
Yeah.
Real.
But yeah, also real.
So I think we should wrap it up here. I think we're
we're just about
any more questions?
time.
You give me a final.
We have a couple more closing questions and statements.
Sure.
So we're gonna bring it back to the central theme of "I'll Call My Guy," and it's just I think it's crazy how I'm sitting here with you and Leah and Sophia because.
We called our guy.
We both called our guy, which was you. For me personally, I called you a year and a half ago. What prompted me to reach out to you was I was in an ethics class for my last class before I graduated, and it really, really changed my life and opened my eyes to really everything we're talking about today. And I was really inspired by just philosophy in general and ethics and right and wrong and I don't know, here we are now. So I think it's really full circle. And I know Leah has a similar story as to why she's here as well. So
yeah, I mean,
it's really beautiful.
I mean, to build off of that, I think, Rich, you do have this lore and this allure about you that people feel safe and comfortable with you. And I knew you indirectly in a like somewhat like a professional capacity, through my former boss. And this is over 10 years ago. And I was going through a really hard time with my separation from my ex-husband. And our mutual friend, Steve, recommended that I reach out to you. And, as soon as he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't I think of this? And you do have this white knight kind of allure about you that like I felt immediately like safe and comfortable and like
me
this
too.
Like you're gonna take care of the situation for me, and I already kind of like knew you, but then like you really came through full circle way more than I anticipated, obviously. And now we're here 10 years later and I'm your director of operations, and I just you are that guy for me personally for a lot of reasons. That is a huge one for me. You came in a really hard time in my life and made my life a lot easier and better. And even now you're doing the same professionally, that we can be together and I can support your dreams and visions and things that you want. And when I think of something that I need or I need to know, I'm like, Rich is going to know. Rich is going to know. And I think everybody does feel that way about you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You are the guy.
Thank you.
So
I enjoy being the guy, obviously, and obviously working through my that certainly, and maybe it's probably a product of my father abandonment issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like because my dad took off, so when I was young, so that's probably what it's born out of, is my guess.
Right.
But whatever. I like helping people,
but
and
it's a gift.
It's
a gift.
it's good because I can help people out of it.
Yes,
it's
you've made that
inspiring.
into a gift.
And it's not to a point where like I think in some of my life, maybe my earlier, like my 20s and early 30s, I may have taken it too far. Like I would just help people with everything and I had no boundaries and it would be a people
Right.
pleaser and then you can really
Mhm.
destroy your life. But now I do it in a professional and a personal capacity. And sometimes, there's a lot of people that vie for my attention, right? And so they feel neglected or I'm out helping other people. And so you got to balance, you got to balance that.
That's
But
also true. Yeah.
I do enjoy, helping people. And I do like the rush of the people telling you that you helped them. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I mean,
No,
I'm
there's
not,
not.
I
Not at all.
want to feel good about
Yeah.
doing that and know that I helped somebody and they're appreciative and I like to hear that. And
There's nothing wrong about doing the right thing.
yeah, so I
So.
feel good about it. So thank you for saying that. I'm
Yeah,
happy
of
to
course.
keep doing it.
And thanks for coming on your podcast
Yes,
did.
and letting
Thank
us
you.
interview you.
Thank you. And I'm glad I can be here and hopefully get some interesting guests for people and talk more about calling their guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, ladies.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.